Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Raising the New Earth podcast. I'm your host, Noah Dory, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Julie Bennett. Julie is an amazing woman whom I love very, very much. She's also a chief people engineer and the founder of JB Consulting Group. She's an executive coach and leadership development and facilitator. She is truly a people problem solver with 20 years experience helping leaders and mega clients from all around the world realize their potential and exceed their business goals. Some of our clients are Cisco, Microsoft, Google, just to name a few. Welcome to the podcast, Julie. How are you?
I am well, and thank you for that lovely introduction. You may need to send it to me.
I'll record it to you and send it over, even
Beautiful.
better. So, Julie, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to do what it is that you do.
Happy to. I grew up loving to read, and I get to college and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. And I don't know, right? Like most people, most of the time. So I was a psychology major because it was the only thing I thought was interesting. And that was basically because when you're in high school, you get 12 years of English, 12 years of math, 12 years of science. They take psychology, and you're like, look at this. This is amazing. So I started my psychology major, and my grades are terrible because it was a big university, the University of Iowa, and your grades were 3 multiple choice test exams and class participation. So 90% of your grade, 3 tests plus that. And I was always a writer, so I didn't do very well at that. And so then I decided, okay, I'll just be an English major. It's what I've always loved. Screw it. And then, of course, everyone's asking me, like, are you going to teach? And I think, no, teaching's awful. Why would you ever want to do that? So I go down that path of teaching. I get my master's in education because that's all you can do with an English degree. And then I started teaching, and I realized I like being in front of people, but not high school. I wanted people who actually wanted to be there. So I started doing all kinds of training. It's like, all right, I like to be in front of people and I like to be a master of something. So I trained sales and customer service training. And there were the people who followed the process, who did all the things we asked them to do, and the people who didn't. And the people who didn't were still successful because they just understood people. And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to be the person who can get someone to say yes, get someone to say no, get them to be interested. So I started looking at all kinds of psychometric tools like DISC and Myers-Briggs to try and figure out, how do you figure people out? So I started doing leadership coaching, and it all kind of went from there. And maybe superpower gets overused as a term, but I think most people do have some kind of superpower. And one of my superpowers is I can get anybody to talk to me.
That's incredible.
And you need to be able to do that. So I took my love of people, getting anybody to talk to me, and my love of telling people what to do, and I put it all together.
My love of telling people what to do. I love that.
But
Awesome. So looking around you, did you have a role model saying, I want to be her or I want to be the female version of him? Did you have a role model?
they specifically had a role model, but I'll give you 2 examples. My grandmother is one of my most favorite people in the world. She's deceased now, but she went to the University of Illinois in the 20s, right? So she graduated with a business degree and, of course, was the only woman who was majoring in business.
Wow.
She didn't get married until she was 27, which back in the day certainly would have made her, very old. She ran my family. She was 100% the matriarch. If you asked anybody in my family who their favorite person was, we would all say my grandmother, maybe with the exception of my mom, who might say my dad, but probably would still say my grandmother. But everything was hers. The money was hers, the house was hers, and we all did what she said. And she still made cookies and Kool-Aid and was this perfect grandmother. But she was just someone who did what she wanted to do in a time when people didn't. So I looked at her, and she was one of those people who kind of made me feel like I could do what I wanted to do. And then in comparison, there was my mother. I grew up in a small town where there were not a lot of opportunities for people to work. So you went to the bank and you worked there the entire time, or the grocery store. But this large company put a factory in this small town because they knew they could possibly take advantage of a lot of female labor who had no choice to do anything but work there. So my mother worked there because that's the only choice she had. She hated it. But she did it because she wanted dance lessons for her kids and braces. And so she would come home, having been at that factory all day, and she'd almost always have a headache. And it got to the point where we would greet her at the door with aspirin and a glass of water because we knew she had a headache. And that didn't teach me, hey, do all the stuff for your kids. It taught me, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to work a job I hate. So maybe that means I go and be an English major, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe that means I don't take the most secure job, but I'm not going to do a job I don't like.
That's such a powerful teaching for everyone, right? Who's, kind of wanting to make the leap, because I absolutely adore what it is you do, and you get to travel the globe and being your own boss and really thrive in a profession that you kind of made for yourself. Because I don't know a lot of people that do that, except, and we can talk about Maggie Stiff, the actress who plays Wendy Rhodes on one of my favorite TV shows, Billions. So have you been told before that you kind of remind them of her?
I have. The first time I hadn't watched the show, and there was this person I was working with, and he and I got kind of close. He just happened to be going through a divorce. And some of the connections I make, I meet people at a random time. Like we weren't trying to meet as he was going through a divorce, but that's just what happened. So everyone wants to be listened to. But what I do that most people don't get is they get. So I talk to people and like, you really get me. I'm like, yeah, it's not that hard, right? But for people who never have that, and like people don't listen to me, people don't get me, I provide people that. So he and I got close really fast because of everything that he was going through. And he asked me, he's like, oh, have you ever seen Billions? I'm like, no, haven't seen it. He's like, there's this woman on the show and she really reminds me of you. I'm like, oh, okay, great. So I watched the show and my reaction was, her? You think I'm like her? She's amazing. Yes, the wardrobe and all the things, but she's powerful, she's independent, she doesn't take any crap. Now, where I don't think I'm entirely her, the part that I do think aligns is I call myself a consultant, right? But part of what I do is certainly coaching. And some people, if you follow a strict coaching paradigm, you only ask questions. What do you think you should do? What is the right thing to do? You do not tell people what to do. That's not me. That's the consultant. So I'm part coach, ask the questions, try and get people to their own answers, part consultant, tell people what to do. And there's still the part that's therapist, right? Because you just get somebody at a crap day and that's just where they are. And they're not going to listen to anything you have to tell them. They just need empathy in that moment. So I'm part of all those things. But that part of Wendy, where she just looks at people and she's like, this is what we have to tell them. This is what that person needs to hear. This is how we approach him. That is what I do. And most people cannot do that on their own, right? So if you're the leader, you're thinking, I have to get that person to meet their numbers, and you're just focused on the outcome. You're not focused on how do I get that person to reach that number, which for some people is negative reinforcement. For some people, it's positive reinforcement. For some people, set an example. But in your busy day, you don't have time to figure out all of that stuff. So that's what I do. But yes, looking at Wendy, that take no crap. If somebody's lying to her, she just says, she's like, yeah, that's not right. And she just tells them. So yes, I thought that was a perfect person to be aligned with, and I took it 100% as a compliment.
It is a compliment. And I think, you know, and you probably have noticed, like, the brands that may have female CEOs and brands that do not. Have you noticed any differences in those brands, being the leadership is different just based on gender? And how did you have to maneuver through those different brands?
So I was thinking about your question in advance. And most of the work I do, as you mentioned, is in tech. So I don't know that Cisco and Google have much of a brand, as opposed to you look at a company like Spanx. that is
Mm-hmm.
woman created, woman
Love
owned,
Spanx.
woman product. Like, yes, that brand and that leader go together, right? So I have a friend of mine who I met at Cisco. Her name is Sally Christian, and she has this company called Argent, and it is a female clothing company. And she designed that company because she had looked at some data that talked about how much women are evaluated by what they wear and how their compensation is tied to what they wear. And it
Wow.
blew her mind.
Wow.
So that whole thought of look better, feel better, do better. So if you're in your interview and your shirt doesn't feel right and it just like it doesn't feel like you, and of course you have no pockets to put anything in, like you're not going to do as well. So her motto is drop kick the glass ceiling, which I loved.
Mm-hmm.
So she creates this clothing line that are work clothes that still have personality and look good, but more importantly, you put them on and you feel good. And part of her whole design theory is pockets. Now, while you may think, yes, I like pockets in my clothing, she had these statistics that showed, let's say you're in a business meeting and all of you are in the boardroom and now you're going off to lunch. And the men walk out of that room and they go to lunch. The women don't. The women have to go get their purse, go get their bag because they need a feminine product, because they need their lips, right? And they don't have pockets to put anything in. So because the women go to their desk, they miss that conversation of walking out in the room.
Oh,
And that conversation of walking out in the room is the one that makes the connection. And because you have that conversation walking out in the room, that person sits next to you at lunch. So now the woman goes to lunch, all the men are already seated and they're taking the one seat in the corner. And how that time after time affects promotions and affects their compensation.
wow.
Pockets.
Wow.
So she representing that brand, I love her in that brand. And I do think people certainly want to support brands that they feel that they are aligned with. But in the companies I work with, like they're so mega, it's kind of hard to do. But I do follow Satya, who is the CEO of
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft. And yeah, I love some of the things he says. And do I feel better about any investment I make to Microsoft? Because of him, I do. So I do think leaders at that level need a brand. I think for that overall momentum and impact it has on the organization. But yes, I think there's plenty of places where you see that leader and that brand and you think it doesn't match. I don't remember the leader's name of Lululemon, but I saw him
Mm-hmm.
in an interview and I'm like, him? That's the guy who created Lululemon? Huh. That's not who I would have thought it was. So yes, I think those two things are important and it helps customer engagement and return business.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you establish and enhance key currencies and what are key currencies in your point of view?
Two things that my whole business is designed and set around are self-awareness and trust. Nobody's going to follow you if they don't trust you. No one's going to listen to you if they don't trust you. And building trust with individuals one-to-one is one set of skills and needs. And building trust with an organization is another thing, right? So AT&T just had a major data breach. Basically, I think they let go of the data of all their cellular customers. How that leader gets trust back for AT&T or the org, that's a lot of work. So I think where I talked about superpowers, people have the currencies that are more important to them and the ones that they think of in that person. So for me, respect is not a big currency.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't care. Like my ability to respect you, it's just not a currency to me. Do I need to like you? Yes. Trust you? Yes. Want to listen to you? But I don't have to respect you to do work with you. But other people do, right? Like I would never work for a leader I don't respect. So trying to identify what those key currencies are for people, that's the first step. So you could get a list. Here's a list of 100 currencies and things a good leader needs to do. But you're going to look at that list and you go, oh, that one, that one, that one, right? So there are a bunch of them that you think, oh, that's nice to have. But then they're the ones you look at, oh, no, I have to have that. So part of my goal is to identify those in a leader and then help them understand what the teams are. So I had this leader who was working for this woman for a long time. And he kept saying, like, I really hope she appreciates how long I've worked for her, and hopefully this will get me promoted because I've been so loyal to her. So I tell him, I'm like, she doesn't value loyalty. And the look on his face was like, does not compute. I'm like, no, she doesn't value loyalty. He's like, what are you talking about? I've done all this stuff for her. Like, all right. So what I mean by that is she doesn't think of you as hers. You're not her person on her team. So she wants what's best for you. So if you take another job in another organization, she's going to support you and encourage you. Is she glad you stayed for 4 years or whatever it is? Yeah, but she doesn't value that. And at first he was horrified, but then he digested. No, she just wants the best for you. And that might not be staying on her team. So that disparity of what the employee thought was her currency versus what was hers was huge. And they didn't know that. So figuring out what they are and build from there. But yes, you are not going to be successful if you're not self-aware, because you have to know what you do well and what you don't do well. Because otherwise you will kind of naturally, with bias, surround yourself with people who are like you, which is not what you need. You need people who are different from you. But you have to have the language of all the currencies to know what those other people have that you don't.
So what are some of your favorite tools to breaking down someone's currency, and then how do you use them? Because I know you do like fun team building workshops. How do you match those to the clients you work with, or the particular people that you want to emphasize these to?
So because I'm a solo practitioner, I do have a variety of people I work with for different things. I can customize it. So when someone comes to me and goes, we need something on collaboration, I don't pull collaboration off the shelf. I go, all right, well, let's figure out what collaboration really means to you. How are you going to use it? So most of the workshop work I do is custom built. Now, I'll throw a question back to you when it comes to key currencies. So Noah, if I asked you, how do I build trust with you? What would you answer?
By engaging me in a topic that I know, and you know how to take me to the next level within it.
Beautiful. That is not how 2,700 other people would answer that question.
Yeah.
They would answer that question, you have to have my back. Got it. The other person would be like, oh, you don't ask me to do anything you wouldn't do. Someone else is going to say, when we're in a meeting, you support my ideas and you never counter me. Well, I just thought we were talking about trust. I didn't know we were talking about all these different. So you can use that word of trust, but then when we go to actually break it down, so I do this exercise where people have to say, how do you build trust with me? And I start with, and you can't say, don't lie, cheat, or steal. So we're going to assume, right? We're going to assume we're good, intelligent people. But beyond that, I want to get to the nuance of trust. And your answer, someone who listens to me about something I'm interested in and takes me to the next level. Most people aren't going to answer that. But your leader needs to know, oh, I do need to have her back, but it's custom to her based on what she's interested in. So yes, in my workshops, I like to take, some people call them soup words, right? Like if you say, what do you want to eat? I want some soup. I'm like, I don't know. What kind of soup do you want, right? So if I say, oh, you got to build trust with me, I go, what is that? So to go around a room and you hear everybody answer for how to build trust with me, people are like, oh yeah, I never do that with Noah. I didn't know I was supposed to do that. I just talked to her about all the things I care about and think she's going to listen. So yes, I like to break down big, big things. My goal in any workshop is, it's kind of an adage, the person who's doing the most talking is doing the most learning. So it shouldn't be doing the most talking, right? It should be them. Because there's also the old statistics of, you remember 10% of what you read, 20% of what you hear, 30% of what you say, but 90% of what you do. So when I'm in a workshop, I'm trying to get the people to do the thing. So if they read it and they said it and they heard it, they've done all these things to embody it, they're going to be a lot more likely to retain it, because nobody wants to go to a 4-hour workshop where someone's just talking to them.
Right.
In a traditional, right? So if you think of generational learning, traditionalists did. So our grandparents' generation were like, yes, just tell us more. They sat there, they listened, and they digested. But as you move through the generations, it is less bits of learning over time. So now you have to like switch topics like every 7 to 10 minutes. So you've got to have the variety. It has to be custom. But yes, I like taking those big generic concepts and making them specific to the person. Because again, you take something like recognition. Some people are like, I want you to mention my name at the all hands. And other people are like, don't ever do that. Do not mention my name at the all hands. It's so embarrassing. People are like, hey, are you going to send that email to the boss and tell him the good things I did? And other people are like, I really wish you would send emails to the boss. So again, you think you're doing the right thing by mentioning Matan's name at the all hands. And Matan's like, so yes, you got to figure out those big things and make them custom and unique for people. And as much as I like all things virtual, if I can be face to face, I prefer it because I'm trying to get somebody to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And you are less likely to be vulnerable when you are in your home, in your chair, with your dogs right there, where you feel comfortable. But if I put you in a hotel, in a terrible banquet room with uncomfortable chairs, that actually helps because I'm getting you physically out of your comfort zone to mentally get you out of your comfort zone. But yes, I do workshops at 10 o'clock at night because I have an Asia Pac team. And does it make sense to do that? Yes, but that level of engagement face-to-face versus virtual, it's just not the same. And most people know, back to my other point, the business and the relationship building gets done at dinner. People are just talking next to each other. They're talking about their kids, then they're talking about the business. They're tired at the end of the day. That's when they break down. I should say break down in a negative way, but like break down some of
Break
those
the walls.
Yeah, break the walls down, and then people get more accessible.
I think some of what makes you so brilliant in what you do is those nuances. So you took a little bit from your education background, the psychology, your love for, the clients you work with, those companies, and you really created a niche for yourself that everyone can benefit, whether it's an individual or companies. And those nuances is what fascinates me really about, because there's a lot of work involved in what you do. You got to break down, I'm assuming you're breaking down the characteristics of everyone. So how long does it take you to analyze a company and tackle and deliver what it is that they want you to deliver?
Sorry, making a note. I want to make a point and then get back to that. Analyze, tackle, deliver. So I want to talk about nuance for a moment. So you, Miss Noah, you have 3 children. They are not the same. But you and your partner have essentially raised them in the same way. You take them to the same places, you do the same thing. But all those 3 kids, they're individual to no fault and responsibility of your own. So you know the nuance in what makes them happy.
Right.
And how they learn. But you've been with them since 0.
Right.
So you figured it out over time. And you're willing to invest any amount of time into your children, as opposed to the people you work with, right? You have that same amount of time and energy. So we have to find a way to do it faster. And we'll come back to that. So one other point on nuance. Again, like you mentioned, I work with leaders at Cisco, Microsoft, Google. These are highly talented and capable leaders. So back to nuance. So let's say, for example, they are at 90% of the pie of their leadership potential. They have gotten their MBA, 20 years experience, read the books, so they've done all those things they can do on their own. But now there's this 10% gap that they can't close on their own. So they don't need me to come in there and go, you should trust your employees. They need me to come in there and go, listen, so Noah's been in this role for 6 years and I think she's stuck. She really likes what she's doing, but the way to specifically that's that level of nuance. And again, they don't necessarily have the time, the energy, or the wherewithal to put those things together. So I'm helping leaders close that little bit that they can on their own. And I liken it to losing weight. So let's say you're losing a large amount of weight and those first pounds, like they're so easy. Like you just exercise a couple of days a week and the weight's falling off you. But as you get to that end of the goal and you're like, I'm already working out 5 days a week. I'm doing all these things and these last pounds won't come off. That's what I help leaders with, are those last pounds where they need something nuanced. Now, time it takes to analyze, tackle, and deliver. I'm going to say that's dependent, right? So I like to give ish or ish answers or yes and no, a little bit of everything. So it depends on their challenge. So what I often get are new teams. There's been some kind of reorg, there's a new leader, and they're all coming together and they're starting over. So most data will tell you it takes somewhere between 9 to 12 months for a team to function as a high performing team. A lot of people are familiar with Tuckman, which is norming, storming, performing. So you got to get through the storming to get to the norming, to get to the performing. So my goal is to take that team from storming and get them to norming. So I do use a psychometric tool. It's called the Instinctive Drives, or the ID. It's a 20-minute questionnaire, and it just gets to why things are important to you. And because I understand why things are important to you, I know how to communicate with you. I know what motivates you. So when I use a tool like that, that analyze goes much, much faster. So now I can get them to go from storming to norming in less than 6 months. Because what a tool like that is, and again, there are lots of different tools, Myers-Briggs, et cetera, it gives you a language to talk about. So when you say, again, for Myers-Briggs, your ENFP, you still have to do the work to know what that means, but it gives you a language. Because otherwise, if you say, you need to build trust with me, and I say you need to build trust with me, those two definitions are really different. So having some kind of language to talk about what you need and make it okay to ask what you need. Like, I need you to give me feedback. If you give me feedback, it gives me confidence, and then I can move forward. So depending on the challenges of the team, it's a different kind of process and quantity. I was doing some work with Microsoft, and they were starting their inside sales team. So I think they were trying to get to maybe like 5,000 employees in 4 years. But when I started, they had 12 in their inside sales team. They had the Asia leader, the Americas leader, the European leader, plus the PMO and the sales, right? All those things. But yes, trying to get that team. Yeah, no, we're trying to build a team of 5,000 people. So that took a while. So yes, trying to analyze people. Most people who come to me have some sense of what they want and they need. So I sometimes get asked, like, well, what about when you get people you don't like to work with? You might not believe me on this, but that generally doesn't happen because the people who focus on their people are good people. The people who don't care about people, who are jerks, don't call the lady to talk about their teams, right? So I get people who genuinely care about their teams. They want to do the right things. So again, that analysis goes faster because there aren't people who are trying to hide anything. Like, they want to be accessible. They want to tell me what I need to be successful. And you go back to the example of closing the gap. These are leaders who know and admit, yeah, I'm not good at that part. This is why you're here, to help me with that part. I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's get started.
How do you think that your expertise in communication and analyzing personalities and characteristics come to play in your own personal life? Do you feel it's an advantage or a disadvantage? Have you mastered it? How does it work in your personal life? Do you
So
get to use it for the better?
heavens, yeah. Well, I think it's for the better. My partner's children did not think it was for the better. So let's just say lying or the omission of data, right? So my partner's son, Keller, had told his dad something. I go, he's not telling the truth. My partner's like, no, he said. I'm like, try again. And so he asks him a question again and he answers. I'm like, it's kind of like he's saying, like, what'd you do last night? We went out. And my partner's like, okay, they said they went out. I'm like, try again. Like, hey, what'd you do last night? Oh, we went out. Where'd you go? What'd you do? Right. So yes, one of the children was like, how can she tell that we're lying? Because I knew what was them and wasn't them. Like, no, he's not the kind of kid who would do that. So if he's saying he did that, there's something wrong. Now, the other child, so both of them took the diagnostic so I could try and help understand them and help my partner to coach them. And it came with this tool that was called a management strategies report, which is basically like what to do for the child to, help engage them. So the older child took the report, printed it out, put it on the fridge, was like, do these things, right? Because it was all the things where he was different than his dad. So my partner and I, in this tool, I use CID. There's 4 dimensions. We have 2 that are the same and 2 that are different. And that's my ideal. I say opposites might attract. It does not mean they stay together. And if you are different from person in every way, you're like up to your down and black to your white, like that's a lot of work. But if you're the same, all the vulnerabilities are the same too. So all the things you don't want to do, your partner doesn't want to do, and somebody's got to want to do those things. So his older son is a planner, likes to know when are we doing things, how are we doing things, and my partner doesn't. He's like, let's wake up on Saturday and see what we want to do. I'm like, all right. Now, the answer isn't we do everything for the child, and the answer isn't do everything for the parent. Like, there's a way to meet in the middle. So what we started doing was when his son would ask on Friday, what are we going to do this weekend? We would say, Friday night, he and I are just going out to dinner. We'll be home early, right? So then he and I have no real commitment to where or to when, but we've got a plan. Like on Saturday, we're having people over. And then Sunday, free day, nothing scheduled. So it gives us that ability to still do whatever we want on Sunday. But now the son can plan, when is he doing homework and when is he seeing his mom? So everybody wins. He gets that overall picture and plan, but we don't feel like we're tied to the specifics. Now, back to the psychometric tool. I had been working with this tool before I met my partner. And I had asked someone I work with, I'm like, how many days before I can ask him to take it? And my colleague was like, you got to wait at least 3 days. Otherwise, he's going to think you're crazy. I'm like, all right. So he's going to think like he's got to do right on this test or you're not going to stay with him. I'm like, kind of. So again, my theory was, again, two the same and two the different. And to his luck, that's how it showed up. So both of us are very impromptu, in the moment, figure things out as we go. But he is an analytic decision maker where I'm not. So this is a good balance of he's like, we should go right on this corner because the thing says to turn right. And this is right, all the things. And I look at it and go, nobody else is going right. Like, I think we should go left because we're in a tourist area. Why do we go the one direction? So it's that balance of like gut and instinctual versus, no, this is the logical reason to do what we do. So yes, I use it in my personal life all the time. I use it for my friends because it impacts decision-making. So there are some people who are reactors. You ask them, are you in? Are you out? And they're like, I'm in. And they make that decision really quickly. And they're good. They are committed. They commit without thinking about everything they're saying yes to. And if you think that sounds bad, maybe. But if you're in a corporation and you're committing to some $50 million deal, yeah, you don't know how everything is going to work out. But then you have the other people who are the digesters who are like, no, I got to go when you think about it. They go away, they think about it, and then they're committed because they actually think about what they're saying yes to. But if you don't know that, you think for the digesters, like, why can't they just make a decision? Why can't they just say yes? Why are they being so slow? But if you're the opposite, you're a digester, you look at the other person and go, they can't really mean yes. They didn't even think about it. So yes, those kinds of things, like in friends and family, yeah, I use them all the time because someone's making a judgment. They're bad because they're reacting, or they're bad because they're planning. I'm like, no. This is this person's process. Just because it's like yours doesn't mean it's bad and wrong. It's what this person needs. So that is my philosophy. It's like, what does that person need to be successful? Your oldest child is not a reactor. He's a thinker. He's a thinker and a digester. And that's fine. I'm going to say your middle child is more of a reactor. Not that there's anything wrong with it. She's like, why can't we just go play? Why can't we just do this? And your oldest child is like, well, let's go ask mom and talk about it. Right. But again, your ability to understand that makes it easier for you to coach and support them.
100%. And it's really intuitive, like you said, because I birthed them. So I know who I'm dealing with. And I also take it a step further for me, spirituality wise. What do they have to teach me? Because there's elements in them that are obviously in me. So when it's being brought to like a zoom into my life, it's like, okay. So I got to let go a little bit of of the controlling or whatever I'm seeing in my child way too often. So I do that. What do you think is the most successful leadership style that you have come across?
So I wouldn't commit to a style because I think it's based on where the company is and what they're trying to do. So I work with leaders, a couple of leader friends of mine who are trying to get a CEO job. Got it. So they just don't want to be CEO at any company because of who they are. They want to be a CEO of a company that's in a growth mode. So a company that makes acquisitions. So there's lots of churn. and, things are constantly in movement. And then there are other people who want to go be a CEO of a huge conglomerate, big company, because they want to help it be stable. They just want to run the business. They're not trying to change it, right? So that fit of the leader to the company, I think really matters. Now, again, when you think of CEOs, you have more outward facing CEOs and inward facing CEOs. So CEOs who are out there talking to the stakeholders, talking to the board members, and again, trying to get worldwide appeal, right? So again, someone like Chuck Robbins of Cisco or Satya at Microsoft. But then you have other CEOs that are really inward facing. They just focus on their customers or their internal customers, their employees. So yes, the right kind of style, my real answer is your style. So if you're trying to act like someone else and you're trying to act like some leader that you've seen, you're acting, you're not being. So you want to get a team that needs you. So they need someone who's a digester. They need someone who's a reactor. They need someone who's a dreamer, right? Like you want to get that right fit. So I'm not going to say there's a right style, except that the right style is probably somewhat oppositional to the team, but not completely oppositional. Does that answer your question?
So you can potentially help someone who is looking to be placed with a company based on their skills and characteristics, right? Potentially.
You get someone who's like, I've led multiple teams through acquisitions. Great. We're looking to take on multiple acquisitions, or they're going from IPO to public. Yeah, we want a leader who's taken a company public. Absolutely. Or not. So yes, trying to find that right fit. And also, again, based on what you're good at and based on what you're interested in.
Right. You mentioned how teams are like athletes. So being with an athlete, I wanted to ask you, what did you mean by that?
I mean, highly trained and highly skilled. So for an athlete, like they are trying to be their best, they're trying to maximize their potential. And I think that's the same with employees. I'm not taking a long distance runner and trying to put them on a bike. I'm like, no, I want my long distance runner to be a long distance runner and make every change they can to their physicality, to the regime, so that they are the best. So I'm going to say the same with my seller. I'm going to do everything I can to make that seller the best. I'm not going to have them focus on analytics, because that's not what they need for their conditioning. They need public speaking skills and they need persuasion. So for me, the athlete comparison is kind of about that fine tuning. But again, it's you have a specialty. We're trying to maximize that. We're trying to put you in the conditions that are best for you to be successful.
Have you found yourself shifting people's positions within a company that were a mismatch for their skills?
Yes. So I gave the example of my mom, right? So she was doing something she didn't like. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I think there are plenty of people who are like, gonna go be a business major. Great. Gonna go be an engineer. And they think they're gonna like it and they don't know. So they go and they try it. So again, back to generations. That oldest generation, the World War II, the traditionalists, they had one job and they kept it. And they didn't move. And they might literally stay in that exact same job. But they also might go on that stair step of, I was in the mail room and now I'm in administration and now I have my corner office. Well, our jobs aren't like that anymore. Like this is my career path, up, down, sideways, right? So trying to find what's right for you, usually you have to try. Again, most of my work is in tech, which spends, I spend a lot of time with engineers. Engineers typically not so good with people, right? That's why they call me. So you have all these engineers who care about engineering. They want to get their hands dirty. They want to tear things apart, look inside, figure out how they work. But we need somebody to manage the people. So now we promote some people. And they're like, I got to manage people. Crap. Some of them like it. Some of them thrive. Some of them don't. But the amount of relief when I tell somebody, you don't have to be a manager, they're like, oh, because in most places, that is the way to get promoted. So in most companies, technical companies, you have two tracks. There's the manager track and there's the technical track. The technical track is much skinnier and much harder, but it's the way you avoid people. So most people go on the other side. But again, you didn't become an engineer to manage people. You became an engineer to build stuff. So yes, the number of those engineers that we have to figure out, okay, so this is a leadership role, but still half execution. That's going to make you happy. And how much of that role is leadership? But then you do get these engineers who actually like people and like leadership. It's like, okay, we got to put them in the right positions. But yes, I think a lot of people, they don't know if they like it until they try it. And that's fair. But if I talk to someone and they're miserable, and it's been 2 years, I'm like, you've tried hard enough. Like two years is long enough to know you don't like it. You should leave. You should try something else. And so that's part of what I do. So, I talk to all the team, and then let's say it's you, right? So I talk to you about your team. I go, yes, that person is in a planning role. They're perfect. They're thriving. But this other person, they're kind of a reactor and they're in a planning role. Like, are they happy? I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. I'm like, well, maybe we should move them. Maybe we should put them in a role that makes them happy. But obviously, a lot of people don't know until they're in that role. They try it and they go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So I like to use this theory of asking people how much needs to change. So of your day, what percentage of your day are you doing stuff that you like versus you're good at? So I asked a leader this recently, and he said, 80% of my time, I'm doing something I'm good at. Great. What percentage of your time are you doing something you like? He's like, 20. I'm like, oh. He's like, well, 30. I'm like, oh, I don't care if it's less than 80. Like, you can go 20 to 40. It's not what we're looking for. So a lot of people, they have something they're good at and they've done it for a really long time, and now they don't like it anymore. They're bored. I'm like, okay, well, we got to work on that. So yes, I want you to be doing at least 80% of what you like, because otherwise, what are you doing it for? And not every job is perfect. So we all have to do our expense reports at some point in time. We all have to do the yearly budget and planning. It's probably not going to be 100, but we got to get at least 80.
And that also applies to nutrition. I always say to people, unless you have a chronic illness, it's the 80-20. 80% healing foods that are good for you, 20% enjoy it, have a blast. I wanted to ask you about being human with each other. What does that mean? I read it on your website.
I think it goes to a little bit of what I was saying about acting, right? So are you acting like you're tough? Are you acting like you're nice? Are you acting like you're friendly? If you are acting, people are probably going to know, right? Now, you can also try new behaviors. And so let's say I work for you and you're a new manager. I go, they're trying to figure out how to manage. I'll give you some patience and grace because you're trying. Now, when it comes to being a human, the pandemic turned that up a notch. So all of a sudden we were in our homes and we saw your kid walk in and your dog walk in and your partner bring you lunch. Like, oh, you're a human, right? Like you eat, you go to the bathroom, you walk your dog, right? Like, you are a human. So yes, you are on my team and you're my employee. But if I don't treat you like a human, it's not going to work. Like, I can't push you too far. I can't ask you to go that many nights on the road, away from your kids, away from your family. And as a human, if you tell me, listen, that Tuesday night is my kid's recital, I'm like, great. Reschedule the trip. Go to your kid's recital. Because you going to your kid's recital is the right thing to do as a parent. But it's also going to keep you with me longer. Like, if I let you do the things that you want to do. But if you don't get to go to the recital, and now your partner's like, you're missing the recital again, now you start to feel bad. So now your partner starts to think your job stinks because they don't let you be a human, right? So I think sometimes the partners are the ones that talk employees out of the jobs, because the partners are like, you're miserable, like you're never happy. And the employee's like, no, I'm trying to do a good job. So yes, we have to be humans. You have to be happy. And some people are like, what does happiness matter? I'm like, what are you, crazy? Like, be good at your job, but if it doesn't make you happy, it's not worth it. Be a manager, but if it doesn't make you happy, who cares, right? Like, we do need to be happy, and happy is human.
Do you think that's why I heard that Google allows to have dogs on the premise and they have some kind of childcare? Is that why they have it, so that their employees will be happy and they can be human with their workers?
And to make things easy, I know Cisco used to have like an oil change day where they would bring a company and you would just drive your car over there and they would do an oil change and car wash. Now, part of that, the little devil in my brain says, but they're trying to keep you at work longer.
Uh-huh.
A little bit of that, but it's also you're not rushing out of there at 4:30 to get to the place before it closes at 5. Now, your points about childcare, those are huge things, right? The
Right.
amount people spend and invest on childcare. So to have an option for that at work with somebody you know and somebody you trust, yes, that's huge. Now, I'm a little bit older than you, so I'm going to bring up a reference to the movie 9 to 5 with
Mhm.
Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin and Dolly Parton. So that movie, I want to say, came out in 80, 81. And basically what's about is they're all secretaries, and I say secretaries intentionally, not administrative assistants, because that word did not exist then. They're secretaries, and they have this mean old boss who's really terrible. He like sexually harasses them and treats them like they're stupid, right? So they have this whole plot to kidnap him and things happen. But unrelated to that, they put a system in for childcare in like 1980. They put a system in for drug and alcohol abuse in 1980. So a couple of years ago, I showed this movie to some friend of mine's kids, and they're like, let's say like 10 and 12. So I'm showing them this movie in 2022. This movie came out in 1980, and they watched it and said, it's not that different now.
Mm.
So childcare, still an issue.
Mhm.
Really? Yeah. Treat your people as humans. Again, Google and a lot of companies, they started putting cafeterias in. Feed them. Put good food in there. Now, again, some of
Mhm.
that is good for the employee. And if we feed them, it keeps their brain working, right? And I
Mhm.
know some places have rest pods. Yeah, go take a nap.
Amazing.
Because like sometimes I'm working and I'm a morning person. And at night, I'm like, oh, Julie, you're staring at the spreadsheet for an hour and you haven't done anything. Just go to bed. Like,
Mhm.
you know, you're not going to come up with some magical idea at 10 p.m. Like, just go to bed. So, yes, health and well being is important. Um, as a person, I know like my company's taking care of me, whether it's my 401k or right. Like, yeah, I want to know they're taking care of me because I invest a lot of time and energy in them. I would like them to invest some time and energy in me.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think just being human with each other is a motto that we should take day in and day out, regardless of where you work, if you work, and all that. So
You should tell us your dad died. I am sorry
yeah,
your dad died, but
yeah,
you should tell us because we will be empathetic. And
yeah,
some people are like, well, that's personal. I'm like, okay, not asking you to tell me everything, but otherwise, I'm going to know something's wrong with you, right? I'm going to know you're not
right,
like you normally are. So just tell me. Tell me your kid is sick. And be like, oh, okay. Like, you need to do this later because your kid's sick. Okay, great. Go take care of your kid. It's
right.
easier.
Do you think they don't say it because they have been burned before by employers that just couldn't care less? Because I heard a lot of stories of employers that just didn't care.
Could be that they're burned before. Could be for some people, they think it's vulnerability.
Mm.
So I know, and I have coached leaders when they're going through divorce.
Mm.
Like, you feel comfortable telling people you're going through divorce? Okay. But yes, that is going to put something in some people's heads of maybe we shouldn't promote them because they're
Mm.
going through this hard time. Or, oh, they're not going to be able to travel now because that person has kids and who's going to take care of the kids. So I think for some people, it's too personal. I keep those two things separate. This is my personal life. This is my work life.
Mhm.
So I'm okay with whatever a person wants to do. But what I'm not okay with is the absence of vulnerability.
Mm.
So you can still have vulnerability and not mention anything about your home life. So whatever is important to you, right? So you start talking about religion, people are like, oh, we don't talk about religion at work. It's like, I know that's really important to that person. So yes,
Mm.
you can have your line, whatever it is, and I'm okay with it. So there's this company I do a lot of work with, and there's one leader who's very, this is home, this is work. I'm like, okay. So I asked some people on his team and he wasn't around. I'm like, tell me 5 personal things about Tom. They're like, he lives in California. I'm like, that does not count. Try harder. And they're like, I think he has some kids. I'm like, you think he has some kids? They
Wow.
couldn't do it. They couldn't name 5 personal things. Now, again, this is how this leader wants to be. Got it. But it is limiting his success
Mm.
because that person, other people can attach to them. They want to know, oh, they're a parent like I'm a parent. They're from the Midwest like I'm from the Midwest. So yes, that lack of personal, right? Like it's going to stop some people from attaching. But now there might be other people who look at that and go, oh, they're like me. They don't talk anything about home. You're like, okay. And then there's also definitely cultural ramifications of that. So a
Mhm.
lot of European countries, yeah, you don't talk about home life. Like that's just not how you function at work. So again, a lot of the companies I work with, like they're all global. So yes, this is how we do things in the United States versus this is how we do things in another country. Don't expect you to memorize everything about every other country. But yes, if you have someone on your team from whatever, Sweden and Portugal, might be good to know just a couple things about the Portuguese and the
Mhm.
Swedish, right? Because otherwise you're probably going to step into it when you don't need to.
There's so many takeaways from what you just said. I should have written them down. But I wanted you just to in closing, I remember what I said. Something that I felt was a relief to me during COVID was the fact that everyone juggled personal life and profession. Everyone. There was a video about, I think it was a CNN anchor or an interviewer with the son running from the nanny, walking
Yeah,
in
yeah.
inside the live interview.
It was a
I
great
was
video. Everyone saw it.
it's a great video. It's like, yes, the vulnerability. Thank you, Lord. Like, why do I have to hide my personal life in order to, even as an artist, like as soon as I had kids, oh my God, taboo. Now you won't have time. Now we look at you differently. I was let go by an agency. Oh, now you're a mom. Why does it have to be like that? So COVID has allowed us to see everyone's fragility at those moments of really balancing and how do you make it work. I was interviewed for a podcast and two of my girls walked in butt naked. They were still in diapers or something, butt naked. And I was like, oh God. But then I was also relieved. I am only human. So I can absolutely relate to that, to the
But yes,
vulnerability.
so my theory is vulnerability breeds accessibility. So I saw
Hmm.
you fall down on your butt. I'm like, I sometimes fall down on my butt. They're not perfect. If I look at you and go, Noah's perfect and flawless, you look good, but I think I can't be like that. I can't be like
Hmm.
Noah. Your kids walking butt naked. I go, I can be like Noah. I can do that. That's not so hard. Like something stupid's going to happen, right? So, yes, if you are not some degree of vulnerability, you're
Hmm.
missing some degree of accessibility. And
Okay.
speaking about like gurus and heroes, most people have heard of Brene Brown. She put
Oh yeah.
vulnerability on the
Yes.
map because I think
Yes.
there are plenty of people like vulnerability is crying. Vulnerability is, I mean, vulnerability might be crying, but vulnerability is not crying, right? Vulnerability is just your ability to admit you're not good at that and you don't know it. So yes,
Mhm.
you being vulnerable in a meeting is going, you know, I don't know the answer. I think the best person to talk to is Sean.
Mhm.
Let's talk to Sean. That is vulnerability.
Mhm.
You do not know all the answers. You don't have all the answers, and you're not supposed to have all the answers. What fun would it be if you have all the answers? Just nothing to learn. So, yes, I absolutely love and adore everything Brene Brown has done for
Mhm.
vulnerability. She has put it on the map. And again, her original TED Talk, so many people saw it where she's like,
Yeah.
I hated it and I thought it was stupid. And I'm a researcher and I'm a math person,
Yeah.
stats and facts and data. And she's like, okay, I was wrong. It's great.
Mhm. Yeah. Admitting it. Well, Julie, thank you so much for giving me so many things to think about and for, maybe giving other people, women and men alike, the inspiration and the aspiration to do things differently, whether you're part of a company or you want to become a leader, such as yourself, like you said, we don't have to be miserable. So take the leap of faith, right? And do what you want to do. So
Some people
any,
say like again there's only one trip on the merry-go-round or it's never too late. Yes, all those things, there's a reason why some of those things are adages.
yeah.
So and some of the questions you'd sent me in advance, I think maybe you put something about like that last extra push.
Mhm.
So again, some moms, or I should say parents with young children, like, I can't do this because my kids are young. I can't do this because I'm pregnant, right?
Right.
Again, men don't say those things. And that's when Cheryl Strand, not Cheryl Strand, she's the other one, Sheryl Steinberg, the leader from Facebook, right? She wrote that book, Lean In, which I loved, which
Yes.
basically said, like, again, there's lots of good examples in there, but the one I always remember was there was a woman who was pregnant who didn't go for the promotion because she was pregnant. And then she's like, no man ever does that. No man never goes, I'm not going to take the promotion because my wife's pregnant. They just take the promotion, right? And that's why they advance. The other thing I always remember is it was something statistic of, like, a woman looks at a job description, and if she doesn't think she can do 90% of it, she doesn't apply. And then it's 50%. They
Wow.
look at that job
What a
description,
discrepancy.
they can do most of it, and they apply. So this is my last push. What would you want your kids to think? So I go back to what I thought about my mom when she was working. And again, I am thankful for dance lessons and I am thankful for braces. But your kids are going to look at you and go, oh, my mom went to school. My mom went and got a degree. My mom does something she loves. And you didn't say, oh, I got to wait till they're 10. Like, no, they're in diapers and you're still doing the things. So yes, I'm no judgment about people's ability to juggle all the things that they have, but your kids are watching. Your kids are like, why doesn't mom stand up to dad, right? Why doesn't mom do these things? So it's like, I want you to do those things for you because you're confident and you think you can. But if not, think of all your stakeholders, your little but naked stakeholders, and your other stakeholders on your team. We're like, if she can do it, so can I. Somebody's got to go first. When I started my business, I was like, I hope it works. I did not have a business plan. I had not thought a lot of things through. That's not really my way. But my way was, I know a bunch of people and I know I'm good at it. People telling me I'm good at it. You have to know your value, right? And again, your value is probably more than you think it is. If you don't know what your value is, if you don't know what you're good at, ask. I like to do, speaking of brand, in lieu of doing a 360 where you send somebody a 25-page document and they say all the things you do well. So you can do this, anyone can do this as an exercise. Write your friends, your family, people you've known a long time, people you've known less time, people who've worked for you, people you've worked for. Ask them to describe you in 3 words. That's it. And when it comes back, dependable, determined, persevere, you're like, that's how they see me. They see me as somebody dependable. Or it comes back positive, creative. If you don't know what you're good at, if you don't know what your brand is, just send that email to all those people, 3 words, and I guarantee you there will be themes. And you'll know what you're good at. And maybe it's not what you want. Maybe it comes back dependable and determined. You're like, that's nice, but that's basically saying hardworking. Isn't that an assumption? I wanted to say I'm creative and innovative and have tenacity. Well, then you got to do and say different things so that people see that.
Wow. That's very powerful, Julie. I love
Super
that.
fun.
Super fun. And we do that for acting also. So before we take headshots, we kind of like go around and we ask for 3, adjectives that describe us, and then we go for the headshot. So, yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Julie. Such a joy seeing you, even if it's on Zoom. I love you dearly, and I hope that a lot of people are going to be inspired like I am inspired by you.
Say hi to the butt naked and the fully clothed child.
Will do. All right. Bye, everyone, and thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.